Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all, hey. This is another episode of The Full Set with your host X with the most X. I am Dee Dee Delgado. I just want to welcome everyone joining us. We have a very special guest tonight. And just in case you were unaware of what this show is about, we are uplifting Black stories and we are also filling Black wallets. So make sure you check out that pin post ASAP, early, right now. That's what I mean. That's exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So if y'all don't know who my guest is, that's fine, but you should really get familiar. I'm going to share with you their bio, and I just hope y'all join me in welcoming Shameka to the show. Um, Shameka Andrews is a disability advocate and consultant. She provides resources to people with disabilities, their families, and community organizations. Shameka is currently the community outreach coordinator for the Self-Advocacy Association of New York State. The Self-Advocacy Association of New York is an organization for and run by people with developmental disabilities. How do you pronounce the acronym? SANYS?
SANYS, yep.
Okay. Just making sure. SANYS helps people with developmental disabilities speak up for themselves and others. Shameka is the author of the children's book Butterfly on Wheels and has collaborated with other author book projects such as Behind the Smile, 15 Women Who Survived the Storm. Shameka is a member of the Commissioner's Advisory Council of the New York State Office for People with Developmental Disabilities and I Did Not Breathe. She also serves on the New York State Developmental Disabilities Planning Council, the Board of Catholic Charities Disability Service. Shameka Andrews has an associate degree in business management from Mildred Elley Business School. In 2006, Shameka was the title Miss Wheelchair New York after being second runner-up in 2005. Miss Wheelchair America is an organization that promotes disability awareness and celebrates the accomplishments of women and girls in wheelchairs. In 2013, Shameka became the state coordinator for the Miss Wheelchair New York program. And when she is not working, Shameka loves traveling, listening to music, going to Zumba and yoga classes. Shameka Andrews, welcome to the motherfucking full set. How you doing?
I am doing fabulous, Dee Dee.
I asked you earlier off camera, I was like, how's your day going? And you were like, eh. So how's your day going for real, for real?
It's been busy today, but I am blessed to still be one of the people working. I am working from home right now, but I'm very grateful to have the job and to be able to do the work that I do every day. I was in a workshop, a Zoom workshop earlier with some people, and I was just saying, we were talking about affirmations. And, the affirmation, I have this book of affirmations, and I just open it every day to a certain page that comes up and say, God, if you believe in God, I do. And, what is the message I need today? What is the message I need to carry? And, the message that came up today is, I love the work that I do. And that is absolutely the truth. And I know not a lot of people can say that, and I definitely can. Now, I know you had asked me earlier also to lead us in a meditation, which is something that I do for work as well. So if right now is a good time,
I'm ready for it. If you need to ground us, I'm all for it. I feel very disgrounded. So yes.
Okay, well, those of you who are watching, you can join along as well. If you are interested in meditations, I do on my Facebook page. You can follow me lives on Mondays, and I do them via Zoom on Wednesdays. So the Wednesday ones are specifically for people with disabilities and their supporters. So that's specifically for those groups on Wednesdays. But you are free to join me on Mondays. That's open to everybody that follows me on Facebook. You can also find those on YouTube as well. So let's get started with a little quick meditation. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. And take 3 deep breaths in through your nose, and out through your mouth. Now let's picture the word peace shining over the top of our heads like a bright white light. Feel that peace enter the top of your head, move down your face, releasing any tension, any stress, any anxiety that you might feel. Feel that peace move down to the back of your neck, releasing any tension, any stress, any anxiety that you might feel at this moment. Feel this peace move down to your shoulders, down the back, out to your arms, to your hands, to your fingers, down your chest, releasing any tension, any stress, any anxiety that you might feel at this moment. Feel this peace move down to your stomach, down to your hips, down to your knees, down your legs, all the way down to the bottoms of your feet, sending this light into the ground beneath us, relaxing our body as we breathe in through our nose and out through our mouths. When you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you. And I'm saying thank you because I think that that was the first time in a long time that I've actually taken um, a breath just for me, like, and I focus on myself. And I thank you for that invitation. And I hope that people can leave comments about how they felt about it. I appreciated it very much. So thank you very much, Shameka. So let's get into the conversation, boo. I've been wanting to ask you for like the longest time. If you were invited on a, you have to excuse me. I've been running the streets all day. Okay. I mean, literally, like even that's why I was late. I went to go switch out some things that were in my car, and me and my aunt were in the driveway, like picking apart stuff, finding things from a year ago. It's just a lot. So just stopping to take that breath was actually really, really good for me because I tend to be like high anxiety all the time. But something I've been wanting to ask you is if you were ever invited on a show, what would you want people to know about something you educated me on? But I feel like that may not be the premise. I never ask people what they want to talk about when they come on here, but I do want to ask you, what would you want people to know about the word disability? Like how it's used, how it's misused, like how, like, I know it's not your job to educate a lot of us, but like how, what would you want people to like shut the fuck up about blank?
The words are, and within the disability community, it's tough because everybody doesn't agree about how they want to be addressed and what word they want to use. And I think that is what I would want people to know is a lot of times when people talk to me or anyone with a disability, they want to have this one way of describing us, this one way, that one word, and that's just not, it's not possible. Because for me, and I'm gonna talk about it from my perspective.
Of course.
I use the word disabled. We'll just say that. Lots of people that have disabilities do not like to use that word. But that is how I describe myself. And so I always tell people, it's about who you're talking to. Don't try to blend, with any group for that matter. paint us with a broad brush, because that's just not it. And, you know, one thing I hate, you said, I wish you would stop doing this. Stop asking, what do you want to be called? The answer that I always give is, my name is Shameka. And most of people with disabilities have a name, right? So that's what they want to be called. So as far as, how you describe somebody, most of the time it's not necessary, and they want to use it when it's not necessary.
Right, okay.
And so, there's lots of things, like I can go on, and, you talked about education and talking and questions. I'm a pretty open book, and I'll pretty much answer any question that anybody asks me. But my thing is, don't expect the people, because there are people that come up to me in the grocery store and expect a disability history lesson.
Whoop.
I don't owe anybody a disability history lesson when I'm trying to get a loaf of bread.
Right.
I don't owe you a disability history lesson at all. But so those are the things that kind of irk me, and I think that people should know in general. The other thing is, stop touching people. It's like somebody won't just go up to you and touch, don't touch somebody's chair. Don't touch, a person. If you see a blind person, don't just grab them. These are just things that people have said over and over, and people still seem to not.
It's such a violation of anyone's personal space to be touched without having a conversation about it in the first place.
Right, exactly. It's just crazy to me that I constantly have to say that out loud. It's like, to any other person walking down the street, if you grab, for instance, let's just use the example I like to use in trainings as far as wheelchairs are concerned. It's like a hijacking. So say if you were in your car, if you drive, if you don't drive, just forget it. But say you were in your car, in an empty parking lot, and all of a sudden somebody came, got in your car, and drove away with you in it. That's the way it feels.
So when people reach out and touch anyone who's disabled, it's taking away their agency to say, why would I want to be touched by you, of all people?
It's not like we're dating, or like, I don't understand why you feel you need to put your hands on me in any way. Because most of the time it's complete strangers. So it's like, doesn't make any sense. But I'm going out on a tangent, so I'm just gonna.
No, I appreciate it. It's just a conversation. It's not an interview. I've been thinking a lot about, I teach a class called Dismantling Racism and All the Other Isms, right? And ableism comes up a lot. And I think that, like, we live in such a time where call out culture is so pervasive that even if you are a marginalized person and you say something problematic, or ableist or racist or whatever, what have you, right? It's very much like, oh, this person is trash because, you, as clearly a Black woman, right, who is also disabled, as you just told me is your term, how do you feel like the world should view you? And is there grace for people who have multiple intersections to fuck up?
A whole intersection conversation is very interesting to me, and I
Go ahead, tell us all about it.
Because, and this only happened recently when Hillary was running, right?
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, yes, Hillary Clinton.
I just had to make sure I knew which Hillary you was talking about. I don't know.
So everybody, when she was running, was very interested in women's rights, what, you know, there was all this stuff about women's rights and whatever. So, and that was, and I said this, that was the first time anybody has ever asked me what it was like to be a woman. Because everyone interacts with me as a disabled person, not as a Black disabled person, as a disabled person. So my color and my sex has rarely comes up, ever, until recently, with all of these different conversations of, you know, intersections and, you know, women's rights or whatever. So I really, it's not anything that I really focused on, because I have to prove every day that I walk out my door that I'm a human being, let alone the fact that I'm a woman and that I'm Black. I need to tell people that I'm a human being, as we just finished a conversation, and it's not okay for you to put your hands on me. It's not okay for me to be in a meeting with people with, excuse me, grown ass people, and you put your feet on me. This is not, these are the conversations that
someone put their feet on you?
Yeah, like I'm a footrest, okay? People hang their, I go to public places, people hang their jackets on my chair, their purses. You know, these are the conversations that I have to have with people, that I am a human being, not just sitting in a, you know, just this figment of their imagination sitting in this chair. So the fact that I'm a woman and, like I said, that I'm Black never enters the field. You know, it's not even a consideration. So it's like, because I have to say, I am a human being first. And
this is wild to me. Not that it's wild to me. I feel like I'm learning so much about your intersection, right? So earlier in my conversations on the full set, I don't know if you remember this, but I was interviewing Ayana Ife, and I think I had said, oh, the person was wheelchair bound. And you came into the comment section and you were like, absolutely not, Didi Delgado. You change your vernacular right now. That person is a wheelchair user. Get your life together. And I was like, okay, Shameka, thank you. Like, you know, what do you think? What are your personal thoughts on why people are so afraid to make a mistake?
Well, I think you've said this in your videos before, and it's, you know, now with, you know, COVID and everything, we have this big cancel culture. You know, we cancel people. I mean, you're
some
allowed
people need to be canceled.
Huh?
I said I feel like some people do need to be canceled.
Well, some, yes, some do, but I'm a very forgiving person.
What's your astrological sign?
Capricorn.
Really? You're a forgiving person? You're a Capricorn? Do tell me more.
I don't fit in any of the boxes.
Okay.
So, like I said, I will give you chances. I probably give more chances than I should. I should probably canceled a lot of people a long time ago, but I just don't. So this is the thing. When it comes to disability, it's my first thought is people have no clue. So I just go into it with that. And as far as people, the things that people say and do, as far as, let's just talk about speech for a minute. Okay. Most of the time, people feel that they need to say something, right? But they're not quite sure what it is that they should say. So they end up saying something really silly that makes no sense, instead of just having a normal conversation with people.
Right.
So that's how I approach it as far as, people, and the things that they say. As far as wheelchair back, but I try not to be, the other thing is with words, I try not to be the word police, but wheelchair bound is one of the phrases that makes my skin crawl.
No, I appreciated you even giving me that context when you were telling me, because you didn't owe me an explanation. You could just been like, bitch, don't say that to me ever again. Like, but you were like, that actually makes me so uncomfortable, my skin crawl. And I had to like sit with that. I'm like, and then I had to make the association. What am I saying when I say someone's bound to a wheelchair? Like, I'm giving them their sentence. Like, that's not my business. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I should just use words that people in wheelchairs and wheelchair users want me to use. And so if you're directly telling me that this is what I should say, I think that we need to stop. It's just my thought. Like, I think we need to stop coming up with how also I'm disabled or the one time I had to use a wheelchair. We just need to be like, okay. I think that might go a long way. I don't know if that's how you feel. Like, if you were to correct someone, they say, okay, I'm going to make a note of that and do better. Like, is that okay? Like, like, can people move on after that? Like, I don't know why people get so stuck in making mistakes when they fuck up on an ism,
Right. Well, the other thing is, as far as people with disabilities are concerned, is a lot of times where people get stuck is they will meet somebody and they will make a mistake that that person deems a mistake, and they'll get bitched out. So they feel in their head that anytime they do anything as far as interacting with a person with a disability, that they're going to get bitched out. So the other thing that I tell people is, I don't owe you a good mood. So that's the other thing. It's like,
can someone write that in the comments? Shameka Andrews does not owe you a good mood. We don't owe each other. Yes, go ahead, sis. Okay.
And that's what I think a lot of people go into conversations with. Like, for instance, another common question that people like to ask is, should I offer somebody help?
That is a question I hear often, and I'm like, unless I see someone struggling, period, like struggling, I'm like, do you need help with that? But I'm not gonna go out of my way, especially if the person is already by themselves, like they chose to come out like that, would be my assumption. Am I wrong in making that assumption?
No. And this is what I tell people. Always ask, but you are not responsible and you can't control that person's reaction to your question. And everybody's not going to react the same way.
People get saucy. People be like, no, fuck off, right? And then the person they say it to is like, I am never helping disabled people ever again.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens, is because, that person got angry, told them that, fuck us, go fuck yourself, whatever. I can do, I can open a door by my damn self, whatever. And so then they don't want to ask anybody. But you can't control how somebody is going to react. And like I said, nobody owes you a good mood. People with disabilities, myself included, have good days and bad days like everyone else. And there's nice people with disabilities, and there's bitches and bastards just like anybody else. Just because you're in a chair doesn't mean you can't be a bitch or a bastard.
Isn't that like some sort of like weird thought process? It's like a fucked up thought process we put along with it. Oh, because you're disabled, you should be grateful that someone is stopping to offer you help.
Exactly. That's exactly how it comes off, is you should be grateful. Like, I remember one particular instance where I was getting off the bus and a lady asked me if I wanted her to open the door for me. And I said, no, thank you, I got it. And her response was, I hope you don't hit a pothole. It's like, really? Was that necessary? Like, I don't understand why you had that reaction. Just because I said no. And and people, the other thing
How
is,
dare you refuse help from me?
the other thing is that people feel the ones that will help you and then announce that they did their good deed for the day. And it's like, I'm nobody's charity case. I don't need you to help me. You know, it's like, you know, that's just very off-putting. You know, why would you do that? It's just not okay. Now, as far as, I'm gonna circle back to the word disabled for a minute and Miss Wheelchair. See, when I was Miss Wheelchair New York, when I had the title.
Now, is that a beauty pageant competition? Or
No.
is that a competition based on your disability? Like, I don't know.
It is. I'll go into that.
I'm really interested in hearing about this. Yes.
Before I explain what I was going to say. So, Miss Wheelchair New York is not a beauty competition. It is a public speaking and advocacy competition.
Now, didn't you tell me you don't public speak, like practice? You don't practice to public speak?
Well, this again is another thing. Most of the people they expect you to practice, but I never practiced. I may have, you know, had notes that I wrote down, but I didn't practice. And I probably shouldn't be saying that out loud, but whatever. I run the program now, so I can do it. Anyway, because you're supposed to memorize it, you know, when you go to nationals. But anyways, the point is, it's a public speaking competition. So when you run for your state, for instance, we'll start there. There's three categories. There's your judging interviews, where you're asked a series of questions: what you've accomplished, what advocacy work have you done, what public speaking have you done, what volunteer work have you done, what are you doing in your community. Then the second part is 2-minute. You have to give a 2-minute platform speech in front of an audience. And your speech should be on what advocacy issue you want to focus on if you are chosen. Then the third part is you are asked interview questions on stage in front of the audience. The first set of questions are behind closed doors. The last set of questions are in front of an audience on the stage. So after each of those 3 sections, you get a series of points. Whoever has the highest score after goes on to win the title and represent their state, New York State in this case, at the national competition, and you hold the title for a year. So during that year, you raise money to get to nationals, you make appearances, you do speeches, pretty much whatever you want to do during your year. So that basically is Miss Wheelchair New York. So I started volunteering for Miss Wheelchair in 2005 when the national competition was here in Albany.
Okay.
And then I went on the following year to compete. And like I said, I became second runner-up. And then I won the following year.
Oh, wow. I remember you saying you had second runner-up and then you finally won. Okay.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes, you're welcome. So that's pretty much Miss Wheelchair in a nutshell. And if we weren't dealing with COVID, I would be getting ready for a competition right now.
Okay.
To host one. Because now that I'm the coordinator, it's my job to host competition, not to be in it.
Right.
So that's.
And so is this why you're saying that, like, even though you work from home, you're blessed to like love what you do?
Absolutely. Because I love the variety of the things.
Teach us your ways, please.
Listen, like I said, I know lots of people that don't love their jobs. I'm blessed to be able to do a variety of things. Like I said, I get to do, you know, speeches and go talk to legislators one day, and then the next day I'm running around in a gym with kids. I'm not doing that now because of COVID, but that's like the variety of things that I do on a regular basis. Or like today, for instance, I was doing a class on vision boards and for people with disabilities. That's basically the primary group that I work with, but I do offer some, you know, open to the public kind of things and workshops that people can go to. The reason I had brought up Miss Wheelchair before is I was going to say about the word disabled. And this is how I ended up looking at disabled. When I was running, my platform was that I came up with was called Redefining Disabled. And as my fundraiser, I developed these t-shirts and posters. And I said, disabled stands for devoted, intelligent, successful, ambitious, beautiful, loving, educated, and determined. So that's why I refer to myself as disabled, because that to me is what it stands for.
That sounds so full, whereas, you know, most of us have been using disabled to describe a person who's lacking something. And your definition seems really full of everything.
Yes, and I think that that's why people don't like to use it, because they see it as a lack of not doing something, and that goes along with another a quote that I like to use when I'm giving speeches, and it says, "I'm only one, but still I'm one. I can't do everything, but I can do something. And I won't let what I can't do interfere with what I can."
As
So
a Black woman, go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I was just saying, so that hits home for me as a motto of, yes, there are things that I can't do, but there's many things that I can do.
Thank you for that. I was just thinking about the intersection you said that most people gloss over, that you're a Black woman, right? And as a Black woman, do you think that the onus, you also being a disabled Black woman, the onus is on you to somehow sort of prove your worth in the world more so than most other Black women?
This is the part that's really been difficult, I think, for me.
Okay.
Because it's like, I not only have to prove myself to people that are not Black, but also people that are Black. Not only because of my disability, but also because I chose to go to college. I have a degree. Most of the people that I grew up with do not. Most of the people I grew up with didn't live in my neighborhood because I wasn't allowed to go to, not allowed, I could not go to school in my neighborhood because the schools at the time were not accessible. My neighborhood wasn't accessible. So I spent most of my childhood growing up in my house. So I rarely came out unless it was to go to school. So that school was my outlet.
Right. Okay.
And because I couldn't go to school in my neighborhood, the places where I did go to school, the majority of the people that I interacted with on a daily basis were non-Black people. So that, affected the way, Black people interacted with me and other people, just, because, I was a Black person who also had a disability.
Right.
So I'm always having to prove something to somebody. And I'm not going to start going on daddy issues, but I mean, it started with my own father.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the last time, I'm not going to get on Facebook and whatever.
No, only say where you feel comfortable, because I don't want you to be like, and that damn Didi Delgado and my vulnerability just didn't go well together.
No, but anyway, I remember, I'll just say this. I'll say this. My last interaction with my father was, I was sitting outside reading the paper.
Mm.
And he was walking. At that time, my grandmother on his side lived across the street from us. And he came over and he saw me and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm reading the paper." And he looked at me and he said, I was 16 at the time. And this was probably only the second time I saw my father, even though, like I said, his family lived across the street. And he said to me, "You can read?" And I said, "Yes, I can." And he took the paper out of my hand. He said, "Read this." He pointed to something in the paper. And I said, I have to go. I can't do that right now.
It's so heartbreaking.
And I went and I took the paper back and I went in the house. So anyways, so like I said, it seems like I always have to prove something to somebody, including myself at times.
Mm.
And not because that's where I kind of am in life. It's more about, I don't really care about what other people, actually I shouldn't say, I do care. I care less. But it's more about proving to myself that the things that I grew up hearing constantly are not true.
Mm.
So that's really what I'm busy proving to myself. All the other stuff, that I know that just comes with being who I am, and I just take it as it is. But so
Thank
anyway.
you for that. No, I appreciate that, because it's like so often we just hear the word disabled or the word, Shameka's a wheelchair user. And it's like, we don't ever ask like what your life is like. And I'm really interested in the fact that you're an author and that you've published a book, and your book is beautiful. We've shared it at our Books and Breakfast events, and we just keep it in rotation. And do you mind talking a little bit about that process? Because I think about how butterflies travel, and I know you also love to travel. What inspired you to write your book?
Well, ever since I was young, because I couldn't travel at the time, because things were not accessible where I lived and how I lived, I traveled in my mind through books, through reading, through journals. So that's really where it came from.
So relatable.
Yeah. Yes. So I've kept a journal, keep journals. I have, if you walk around my apartment, there's journals all over the place. So I've always kept a journal, and most of it's stuff that I never thought I would ever share with anyone. And eventually I started moving things from paper to a computer. And then I was getting rid of my computer. And I said to myself at one point, I should do something with these stories.
Mm.
And then the opportunity came to do the collaboration of Behind the Smile.
Mm.
And that was put together by a woman who lived in Albany at the time. Don't think she's around. Her name is Shari Quinn. Don't know if you know Shari, but anyway.
Shari Quinn, why does that name sound so familiar to me? Is she a radio host?
No, she was in publishing. She was a teacher, and she did some other things here in Albany. But anyway, probably came across her at some point. But the point is, she was putting this book together, Behind the Smile, 15 Women Who Survived the Storm. So I had submitted my story to be a part of that book. And then after she was done with that project, she started offering writing workshops. So I signed up for one, and that's where I came up with the idea to do the children's book. And basically, Butterfly, why it's called Butterfly on Wheels, is I really connect to the life process of a butterfly, going from a caterpillar and, thinking that, my start was kind of in the dirt and slimy and dirty and, kind of messy, to my teenage years where I was in my cocoon and very isolated and dealing with, depression at the time. That's the other reason why I did a lot of reading to deal with a lot of that stuff. That's when I got into meditation, as a way to kind of just, I couldn't move my body out of this situation, but I could use my mind to carry me other places. So
I just dropped a link for your book on the in the comment section. So for people who are just joining or people who are already here, I hope that y'all can grab a copy of Shameka's book, Butterfly on Wheels, and also make a contribution to her PayPal, which is the pinned comment. Go ahead, babe.
No problem. So what I was saying was, I really identify and connect with the process. And now I say, even though I've been an adult for a while, I feel I'm at that butterfly stage of, the last line of the book, for those of you who have read it, is it says, "I'm a beautiful butterfly trying to find her wings. I am a beautiful butterfly ready to spread her wings." And that is where I feel that I am in my life. I have my wings and I'm just ready to fly and be out there. And I have my, my independence. I can, I live in a fully accessible apartment now. I, can be out in the community, despite whatever is going on. but before that, prior to that, one of the things that, community members always would say, and you probably have said this to me before too, is you are everywhere.
I always say that to you. I'm like, I see you everywhere.
And so, and I think really because I was physically isolated for so long, I kind of had to go through a process of a balance of going everywhere and literally being afraid to sit still, to having more of a balance and being able to love that silence and being able to love my isolation and love those periods and have that balance of, yes, I can be out in the community, yes, I can have fun, but I also need my time to kind of, be a hermit and be in my pajamas and, meditate and all of those things, and having that balance. Because like I said, when I first, moved into my own place, because my whole life I went from living with 6 people to 9 people to living completely by myself. So
isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
I get so nervous about moving back in with people.
Yeah, I couldn't even. I remember when I first moved into this apartment, I was still dating my ex, who was about 10 years older than me. And he was at the point where he was ready to get married. And I remember when I got the keys to this place, he's like, well, can I get a copy? I'm like, no. Like, no. And I'm like,
they just be wanting everything. Oh my God.
And I'm like, this is the first time that I'm, in a house all by myself, nobody in the kitchen when I get up in the morning, just me. And I'm like, no, you definitely cannot have a key.
Was that person understanding when you said no?
At that time, yes, but we went through our things and eventually it ended, but whatever. So, it is what it is. It taught me some good lessons. That's how I look at it at this point in time.
You talked about being a butterfly and being ready to spread your wings. When it comes to love, what does it feel like? What's the difference between being insecure and being secure in yourself, right? This is the conversation I've been having lately. What does finding security in yourself look like, since so many other people will fail you?
See, this is.
I feel like you're about to read me for filth, and I'm here for it.
No. No, it's fine. It's, again, with the talking about intersections and how people see people with disabilities. And when you start, and one of the things that's not usually a part of the conversation is sex and relationships.
I'm all about sex and relationships.
Well,
that's where I live.
Most people, are, but when you're talking about somebody that has a disability, nobody asks them when do you want to get married, when do you want to have sex, when do you all of these things that other people have conversations about.
Listen, no, I'm so glad you said it, because I feel like I've been getting some feedback from people. It's like, all your shows are about the same topic. I'm like, because everybody's talking about the same thing. What is wrong with you? Like, I want to get different people's perspectives, so I'm here for it. Whatever you want to do.
So again, with looking at those different parts of myself, I'm really at the point, because that relationship that I told you about, I mean, that was an 8-year relationship. So, and like I said, at that point, I was really transitioning to be independent, and I find that, and I say this about myself, even though I've been an adult for 2 decades now, I really, a legal, you know, and as far as legal is concerned, I really feel that because I was so isolated, there's only one way I can describe is that I missed out on a lot of things.
Right. Okay.
And dating and relationships was one of them. So I'm really feel that I can't believe I'm gonna say this out loud, but that I'm at the point that I'm interested in really exploring that part of myself.
I'm here for it.
Whatever
I could do to, like, if you need me to do a speed dating session with you and in private, we'll get some people. There are some I don't even want to force men on you. So if there are people in Albany who are interested, please, by all means. Is this an open invitation to slide into your DMs? I don't know. Like, I just feel like,
you know, it's
yeah, you're so cute. You're like, you know.
Hey, whatever. You know, I guess at this point, yeah, probably. But so yes, so I just really, because I feel that I haven't, the point is, had the opportunities to really explore when most people explore.
Right.
That I'm at that stage in my life. That's where I am at.
Well, I'm excited for you, and I hope that you will either keep it private or share it or what have you. But, you know, one of the comments, Rose Snyder said, yeah, speak on it because disabled people can fuck, like, you know. And I just, you know, somebody had said to me one time, they were like, it was after we had sex and I was saying something. I was like, oh no, don't bring that cell phone. Like, can you move it? Like, you know. And he was like, what's the problem? I said, I have a pacemaker because I was born with 3 heart chambers. And so, like, just, I try to keep away from microwaves. I try to keep away from cell phones. If I use my cell phone, I gotta use over here. And I said, just, it's no big deal. You know, for me, I'm like, I live with it as it's no big deal. And like, he was freaked out. Like, you have metal in your body and I was sleeping with you, like, you know. And I was just like, oh wow. But yeah, it's like, you know, people would think that like you can't enjoy yourself or you can't experience pleasure, and pleasure is where I live, boo. Like, so
exactly. Speaking of, going back to our conversation with sometimes people want to say stuff and it comes out, you know, crazy things. I remember, because they're very forward. And I remember I was coming out of the dentist's office and this guy was standing outside. He was a good looking guy. He was a black guy. And he stopped me and he said, excuse me, can I ask you a question? I said, sure, because, you know, I'll talk to pretty much anybody. And he said, how do you masturbate? And I was like, and then about 2 seconds later, before I could just take a breath, he's like, do you want to hang out sometime? And I said to him, I said, if you would have asked those questions in reverse, I might have said,
oh, I'm dirty. I'm very much the opposite, because now I'm wondering, is that the way to go? Should I just go up to people I'm interested in and say, excuse me, how do you masturbate? I don't know what the response would be. I am not sure if that's my new pickup line, Shameka. I don't know. Don't use it. Don't use it.
Hey, go for it. Let me know how it works out.
I will. You'll be the first person I hit up. Like, girl, guess what happened?
But anyways, so that was like the craziest like interaction. And like I said, I did not go out with that guy. But I just thought it was just very like kind of bold or whatever, because it wasn't like he even said like, you know, we had a conversation, you talked for 20 minutes, you just went right for it.
So you don't, are you the type of person that if you're dating someone, you want to be wooed, you want romance, you deserve romance, right?
I mean, I like being, I mean, you know, yes, I like flowers. I like you to do stuff for me. I like back rubs, foot rubs. I don't know why I'm saying this on Facebook, but you know, whatever.
I'm ready for it. I feel like this is the application. This is, and what you're saying, I know, like, you know, I make jokes and I'm like, but that's really the bare minimum. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, to be treated well is a bare minimum. That's like a basic requirement.
Exactly. So yes, I like, you know, and then if it leads to something else, you know, let's go for it, you know, whatever. But like I said, it's hard for me because I've had very little, that's the other thing, I've had very little experience in that area. I don't really think that I've, like I said, explored all of the possibilities of what I like and don't like. You know, I can rattle off some things, but I think that there's a lot more out there left for me to explore in that area and about myself.
Right.
So, you know, so yes, but I like somebody, you know, that's, you know, for those people who have, you know, are familiar with love languages, my love language is acts of service. Just putting it out there. If you're not familiar with the 5 love languages, look it up.
So your love language is acts of service. Mine is words of affirmation and also acts of service, because I can hear the words, but if I start seeing like it not match up, I get very annoyed very quickly.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. See, for me with words and people, especially people that are close, and I don't have, and this is the other thing that I realized about myself, I don't have a lot of close relationships because I've had for the longest time issues of trusting people. So I don't really have, and I'm not even talking about like physical relationships, just talking about like friendships. So I think, you know, sometimes when people speak to me, and sometimes I might take it in a different way than so words don't always compute, and I don't always, depending on the situation, like you said, you know, I you know, said something to you because, you know, I was uncomfortable with what you said, and I'm not with that. Haven't always been that way. You know, I would say, you know, I would like sit in certain audiences, and sometimes, you know, people would say, you know, certain things, and we talked about ableism, which we really didn't go into too much. You know, people would say things like, I would be in a room and I would literally be in lots of rooms where I was the only person in a wheelchair, and the person in the front of the room would say something like, let's all stand. And that would irk the heck out of me for like the longest time, but I never said anything to anybody ever. And then I was in lots of rooms where they said, let's all stand.
Right.
And sat there and didn't say anything. So, so that's just really been a work in progress, and trusting people and trusting people's words. It also has to do a lot with, you know, how I grew up, and just being told that, you know, certain people are only going to be around you because they want something from you.
Okay.
So even though, you know, I can say out loud that I don't believe that, in my heart, deep in my heart, it's still there.
Right.
The
Okay.
thought is still there. So words, you know, like I said, sometimes I'm not very trusting of people's words, even if they have the best intentions.
I'm wondering if sometimes if it's your trust or lack of trust in people is because sometimes people make you feel unsafe, like, you know, with the way that they don't center all of your intersections, right? Like, and it's just like an erasure. So why would you trust anyone who makes a habit out of erasing you?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's two topics, two things very important. Safety. That's another thing that I'm really learning, because for the longest time, and still, like I said, it's a work in progress, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel
Right.
safe where I lived because I wasn't in control of when and how I left there. That was always in somebody else's hands because I needed somebody else to help me do that until I taught myself. And lots of people don't know this, but when I was still living at home, I taught myself, once the buses finally actually became accessible at that point. I taught myself, because I was in a manual chair at the time, how to drag myself and the chair downstairs.
Mm.
So safety feeling safe has always been an issue for me. Still continues to be an issue. It's a lot. I have tools to kind of, you know, help me with that now. You know, meditation being one of them. But it's, you know, feeling safe has always been an issue. And then the other, you said something else, safety, and you mentioned something else. Now I
I was
forgot what
talking
it
about
was.
the trust. I was like, do you feel like not safe because people aren't viewing your intersections and thereby they're erasing you or erasing parts of you?
Okay, yes. I was talking about, yes, I remember now. As you know, the fact of erasing, like when people say, talking about words, when people say things like, and they say this for Black people too, well, I don't see color, and they say, well, I don't see disabilities. Well, in order for you to interact with me, you need to see my disability, because interacting with me, you need to be able to accept, and you may need to adapt to the fact that I have a disability. So
Right.
you saying I don't see disabilities is not helpful to anybody. It's not helpful to me. So I need you to see it, and I need you to accept it. I need you to acknowledge it. Because lots of times what happens is people, you know, this has to do with me going out and being a lot of places and whatever. A lot of times what happens is people will invite me to things, and then when I get there, I'll find out that I can't get in the building. Or we'll have a conversation and said, you know, we can accommodate you. That's the big phrase. We can accommodate you. And their version of an accommodation is picking, you know, 4 football-looking guys and having them stand at the bottom of a flight of stairs and thinking that they're going to pick me and my 400-pound chair up. That's not an accommodation that's workable. So I think people, you know, yes, we all want to be treated, you know, with dignity, respect, and whatever. But I am different. I'm different. Though I have lots of differences, and I need people to know that and to accept that and not try to gloss over it. And this is the other thing about words. I know I was going to say was the other thing that, you know, pisses me off about people is they're try to be politically correct with their words. So especially when it comes to using, the word disabled or disability, is that they'll make up words that are not actually words.
Can you give me an example?
Like one that I can think of is handy capable.
Well, why are people? Why are people?
I know people that are handy capable. That's not a word. It's not a word. There's enough words in the English language and other languages for you to choose from. You do not need to make up words. Nobody likes that. Don't do that. I shouldn't say nobody likes it. Somebody probably likes it, but I don't like it. This is about me right now. So
I don't even know how to pronounce that word.
it's just stupid. So that's another thing about words, is that people, they tend to like want to, make words up because they're not comfortable with the words that you're using. Or the other thing about it is they'll hear you say a word. This is the other ableist thing that drives me crazy. Maybe it's not ableist, maybe it's just, people just being weird and ridiculous, but is they'll hear me say a word and they're not comfortable with that word. So they'll correct me or try to correct me.
This happens in my class every Monday night. God.
No, like for instance, we talked about, okay, so I'm in a wheelchair. Everybody that knows me knows that. But one of the things that I will say often, and if you follow me on Facebook, I say, I went for a walk today. And at least
I heard you say earlier, you were like, I was running around, and I was like, I thought that it was ableist to say running around if like the person can't run. So I was like, I didn't say nothing. How do you call out ableism with a person who's disabled? I mean, like, it's just very interesting. I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer.
Again, it's one of those things, like I said, lots of people, I say running around, I say walking around, and like you said, somebody will say, oh, you walk, or or they'll take it, like I said, I am moving about the earth. Like, whatever
You're like, do we have to be so holistic all the time? I don't know.
But, right, and that's kind of my thing about it, is I think we really, there are a lot of problems in the world, okay? Lots of them. We can pick, we can all have a discussion about the problems of the world. Me saying I walked today, I ran around, whatever, should be very low on anybody's totem pole.
Right.
I mean, it really has no effect on anybody else. It's not gonna, take food off anybody's table. It's not gonna take money out of anybody's pocket. It's really not that important. Again, to me, somebody else would.
Yeah, I just think the conversation that other disabled people have is that it normalizes ableism in the fact that like some people can't run, some people aren't walking, some people aren't, and so I don't know. I never know where to land. What you said earlier in the very beginning of our conversation is you have to speak to people as you're speaking to them. Like you can't blanket everyone. And so if you're saying that for you choose to use language that shows mobility, for you it's like what the fuck, I'm running errands, like, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that is for you to share with me. I think that that's a very good thing, because if I was around you and I'm like, oh, Shameka, can you go run this over to Shia, like I would probably freeze after I said it, because then I would be like, like bad use of language, and something else I want to ask you about language is something Audrey, I don't know if you remember Audrey Bridge, they brought to my attention, in your work when you have found, in 2017, you had an article, I don't know if you remember this, 2017 was so long ago, with the Times Union, you talked about how folks don't really know what accessibility means. In
Okay.
your words, what does accessibility mean?
Again, to me, it can't be put in a box. To me, it can't, because what is accessibility to me? And you mentioned the lady that was on your show previously who was visually impaired, whose name
Ayana, yeah.
I'm escaping on. And what's accessibility to her are different things. And even to somebody that has the same disability. Like, for instance, the place that I used to work previously, my disability is spina bifida. Doesn't matter if you know what that is or not. I can talk about it more in a second after I'm done with the story. But anyway, there were 5 people at this job that had spina bifida, including myself. But spina bifida affects different people in different ways. So it has to do with your the level of your lesion, what's called your lesion, which is basically where your spine was open along your spinal column. So you have kind of like a thing that's like circle round along the spinal column. So, and the higher your lesion, the more severe your disability. So there are some people with spina bifida that are on trachs. There are some people with spina bifida that walk, but just walk with, a wobbly gait. And then there's people with spina bifida that use crutches and canes, and people like me that use power chairs. Some use manual chairs. So we all have the same disability, but it affects us all in very different ways.
Okay.
So what we need as far as accessibility is going to be different, even though we all have the same disability. So, so accessibility, again, it has to be a conversation with the person that you are interacting with. It can't be, there are some concepts that are coming into the conversation, like universal design, for instance, which is right off the bat, make everything accessible, no stairs, no anything, entryways, things like that. Then you don't have to worry about, fixing things up if somebody falls, whatever, right off the bat. If you have visitors that might be disabled, they can all come to your house, they can get in, whatever. So if you're talking about, accessibility, going that route is a better option.
Right.
But most people don't even have the conversation, and that's the problem. Or they want to have the conversation after they built something. And then they wonder why it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to fix the problem. Or they say that it costs too much and they can't do anything about it. Instead of, when you're building something, looking at it, what are you planning to do with it? Having somebody come in and saying, this would work for me, and this would work for me, and whatever. Again, you can ask 5 different people, and 5 different people would have a different answer. So accessibility just means different things to different people depending on the group that you are interacting with. So if you're having an event, looking at all of the aspects of accessibility, does the venue have stairs? Does the, are your documents, can you make your documents available in various formats? Right. What does the lighting look like, for people that might have, seizure issues or whatever? What are your bathrooms? That's the other thing that people do as far as accessibility. They'll, say, yes, you can get into our building, but can I get into the bathroom? Can I use can I go pee when I'm at your event? because there's been lots of times where I've gone into somebody's event and had to leave because I couldn't pee. And this is a major issue, especially with a lot of buildings here still in Albany and other cities. As you know, nobody thinks about the bathroom. The other thing is, as far as accessibility is concerned, they'll do the entryway right, they'll do the bathroom right, but when you're in the bathroom, the stall's not wide enough.
Right.
Or they'll have this beautiful accessible sink, and the paper towels or the blow dry things are like on the ceiling, and nobody can reach.
Not on the ceiling. No, I totally get it. Nandi had sent me a question earlier to ask you, my beautiful friend, Nandi K. Nandi said, if you could flip a button and the world could be totally and completely accessible to everyone, what are the first 3 things that you imagine being changed?
Oh wow, that's complete. Stairs. Get rid of stairs.
I just realized that you made an excellent point, that I've never invited you to my house, even though I'm always like, everybody can come over. There's no way that you can come to my apartment because I
think you don't live that far from me.
I live, well, you know where I live. And so I'm not going to say on the internet.
Yeah, you don't need to tell all your business. But
look at my face. And so, but I've never been like, Shameka, especially, like, why don't you come over? And because I think deep down inside, I knew that I don't live in an accessible building at all. Like, we have a set of stairs, and then even into my house is a set of stairs. And if you wanted to go to the bathroom that your chair could actually fit in, you'd have to go upstairs. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that's so fucked up. And now that I think about it, I'm going to write to my landlord and be like, have you ever considered accessibility options for your home?
Yeah. And the other thing is, as far as accessibility, the other thing that I would wipe out, and I would probably wipe out as far as the terms, because we're talking about, erasing. There was a lot of conversation about erasing words, and it's not even a word. It's a phrase that a lot of people use when you contact like businesses and things like that. And you ask, "Are you accessible?" And a lot of them will say, "Sort of."
Hmm.
And there's no such thing. You either are or you aren't.
You aren't, right?
And what they deem as sort of accessible is, and that's the other thing they'll say is, well, we have one step, so you're not accessible. If you have one step, you're not accessible.
Because no one should be touching your chair unless you ask them to.
Correct. If you have half a step, you're not accessible. Any kind of a step, you're not accessible. If you don't have a ramp, you're not accessible. And like I said earlier, having 2, 3, 4, football-looking quarterback guys, as cute as, I want to be lifted by 4, good-looking guys, it's not really a good option. So stop doing it.
And it's also scary. I remember one time, I mean, I had full faculty, but I broke my foot right before I went to Cuba, and everyone who was going on the trip with me was like, you've ruined the trip. You're not going. I'm like, I am going. And everyone's like, how can you go with a broken foot? I mean, like, when I tell you it broke, I mean, it was gone. Like, I mean, it was dangling off my foot and off from my ankle dangling. It was just painful. I never felt anything like it. I don't remember how I drove. I drove with my left foot. I broke my right foot and I drove with my left foot to the hospital. But thank God at that time, I lived right behind St. Peter's. I lived I won't say where I lived, but I just lived in an area that was like literally a block and a half over from St. Peter's. And I drove with my left foot. I had my hazards on and I was literally about to pass out. So I remember like going to Aruba, or no, we went to Bahamas after that, whatever. And they were like, I was like, I want to go to the beach, but I couldn't go in my wheelchair. And I never had considered that. Like, how does someone get to enjoy the beach, like if they're a wheelchair user?
Well, a lot of places these days have beach wheelchairs, and a lot of places are also putting in these wheelchair mats, which is kind of like a sand-like surface that goes all the way into the water.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Dry.
Barbados need to catch up then. I mean, because
I can't. Yeah, I couldn't tell you where they all are, but I know I'm friends with a lot of travel agents. So if you do like the beach, if that's beaches aren't really my thing, but
I love being naked in front of people, so they're totally my thing.
But yeah, so that's that's a way for there are some places that do have accessible beach features, and there are, like I said, places where you can go, and there are even here locally, not lots of people are not traveling at this moment, but there are people that specialize in accessible travel and stuff like that. If you're interested in traveling,
Okay.
don't really know, or you're scared of traveling, a lot of times people are scared to travel, especially if you have a wheelchair, and they hear horror stories, because there's always a horror story. You hear about broken wheelchairs, and yes, probably 9 times out of 10, every time I've traveled, a wheelchair has gotten broken.
Right.
But
or they don't have like powered wheelchairs, it's manual, right? And it's like you have to do all of this traveling on a manual, especially if you're not used to it, or you're not quote unquote physically able to. And I say quote unquote because I don't think people really realize, and you said you had a manual wheelchair before, right? People don't realize how much arm strength it takes to move your body fat. Like, I'm pushing a solid 275 from time to time. Like, it takes a lot of power in the arms to move for a long distance when you got to go somewhere. So
yes, it does take a lot of energy, and I am very grateful for my power chair. I do still have an old manual chair for when I do need to, like, sometimes hang out with people that don't have accessible vehicles, or want to go somewhere where we have to drive and the bus doesn't go, because I take the bus everywhere, or I just drive around Albany depending on what I'm doing. So it's like I said, there are hiccups when it comes to traveling. There's hiccups when it comes to anything, but I mean, I think it outweighs. It doesn't outweigh, the fun you'll have, and it just takes a lot of planning. It just, like, I have to plan, and it's unfortunately there's not a lot of spontaneous things that I can do, but because so much planning has to go into it. I personally, what I like to do when I am traveling is I travel to a specific disability event. So the majority of the planning is already done for you.
right.
And then what I'll usually do is just add a couple of days onto whatever the event is, so I can kind of do my own thing. But I like to do it that way because they already, checked out the whatever, and you don't have to do a lot of work. Or there is, like I said, there are people that will do that for you, just like
Right.
anybody else can get a travel agent. There's travel agents that specifically work with accessibility and finding, hotels or whatever. That my biggest pet peeve about traveling is not even the broken wheelchairs, because I'm used to that. I've dealt with it because I've been more careful about getting my chair ready, because there's certain things that you need to do and you should do. I mean, one of the things that I tell people, if you can leave your chair at home and get a power chair or a scooter where you're going, then you don't have to worry about your chair being, your power chair, if you're a power chair user, being broken or whatever, because power chairs are more, they tend to be more, have a lot more parts than,
Right.
just a regular manual chair. So that's why I tell people, if you can do that, if that is a possibility, finding out if there's a place to rent a chair or rent a scooter or whatever will help your mobility when you get there. So you don't have to worry about your own being broken. But if you can't do that, if you plan and you really, first off, explain to people how to operate your chair. Explain, a lot of people, you can't see mine, but have like tags on my chair that give instructions about how to disengage it. Giving them instructions so whoever takes it from your site, if you're getting on a plane, for instance, because they take it from you. Because right now, I mean, that's the other thing that I would say is, as far as accessibility, if I think they have them in Europe, where they have some planes that have capabilities of letting people stay in their chairs when you're on the plane.
Okay, all right.
So that's another thing that I would say that we need to come up with over here. But anyways, so in a plane, they usually take your chair away. So just making sure that you have clear instructions about, how to operate the chair. The other thing that I do when I travel is I carry an extra bag with me for my removable wheelchair parts.
Oh, okay.
So, you don't have things, because what used to happen is things would fall off and store it while it was in storage, and it would come back and things would be missing off of it, little like, my joystick handle or, something. So I started carrying an extra bag so I can, before they take it from me, take off all of those parts so they don't end up going missing in storage or whatever. And then that stays on the plane with me. So when they bring it back to me, I can just put everything back together. So that's the thing about how I deal with that.
When you travel.
When I travel.
Adora said that this is so informative. Thank you for this labor.
Oh yeah, no problem.
I like how you were like, fuck all y'all. I'm gonna talk to all the disabled people, like, and give them tips on how to travel and travel well.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking about traveling, and because like I said,
where are some places you've been?
I left California, so I've been to California probably at least 5 times. My first trip to California, this was the first time it was in college. I actually won a trip. It was a soap fan fantasy weekend. At the time, I was a big soap fan. those soap operas,
Oh, soap opera. I was like, what? Y'all are really into soap. Okay.
No. That's why I thought about it.
But
People,
no, now that you said it, my mother called them soaps too,
yeah.
or her novelas. So yes.
Okay. Yeah. So soap operas, back in the day, there was lots of soap operas. Now there's just, there's not that many left. But at the time there were a bunch still on, so when I was in college. And so my first trip was that trip, which I won. It was to Beverly Hills, California.
Oh wow.
And it was 5 days, all expenses paid. And each day we got to meet, different soap stars from different soaps that were on at the time. If you follow me on Facebook, you've seen pictures from that trip. But anyway, probably. So I've gone to California a few times. I've been to Canada. I've been to I went to the beach. The only time I've ever been to the beach was in Seaside Heights, New Jersey. That was the only time.
Is that the Jersey Shore?
I think that's where they were. I'm not
Jersey Shore. Why is that my frame of reference? I hate it here.
Was like way after that, but it's probably the same place. But anyways.
Okay.
So there's still I've been to mostly the United States. There's still so much of the United States that I haven't seen and that I want to see. So, like I said, I've been to Canada a few times, Niagara Falls, Montreal. Mostly, New York City. I've gone to New York City a bunch of times because I can get to New York City on the train. That's the other thing. When I do travel, my preference is to be on the train.
Okay.
And
is it because the train is more provides more accessibility options?
Correct.
Okay.
But I know some people with disabilities, wheelchair users specifically, don't like the train because the train, like most places like the bus, they don't lock you down. So you can move like anybody else on the train. And some people don't like that. They feel that it's unsafe, but I personally like that. And yes, they have, wide open space for you to put your chair. You can get to the other car if you want to. Most of the time I don't move between cars because I just usually ask somebody around me, to go get me something or whatever. That's the other thing. I mostly travel by myself.
Okay.
Because it's been my experience, because I do know lots of people that everywhere I go, I usually end up running into somebody I know or just some nice person that just wants to be helpful. So most of the time I travel alone. So yes, I just find that the trains are just way more accessible. Again, that depends on where you're going specifically, because not every station is accessible. And I've had those issues as well, where I've gone to train stations in some towns where elevators were broken and there was like nobody to call, and had to call like 911 because there's nobody to come and get you. But anyways, I still love to travel. Like I said, I just, I just live my life, and I, take it as it comes, whatever. Because like I said, for the longest time, I didn't have the ability to do that.
Right.
So I just, try to take it in as much as I possibly can. Like I said, there's still so many places that I want to go and want to do, and hopefully, at some time next year. Probably not going to happen this year with everything that's going on. But you know, I'll have that opportunity again. So, you know, I like to.
I hope that you do travel soon. Shameka, I just want to thank you so much for being a guest on the Full Set. There's one last question I have that's a two-pronged question, and I try to ask everyone this question. You're like, of course you do, Didi Delgado. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you're like, oh shoot, let me get this in real quick, or let me promote this on Didi's platform, or anything you're surprised I didn't ask you about, because this is a learning curve for me as well. And two, is there someone else that you would like to see on the show that hasn't been on the show?
I think we talked about a lot of things.
We did.
So I can't really think about any one particular thing that I can think of. And as far as people on your show, I would say just as a kind of a selfish one, probably.
Okay.
Is a young lady by the name of Andrea Dalzell, she's a former Miss Wheelchair.
Okay.
She's also, she's been in the news a lot lately because she's a nurse who's in a wheelchair who works and lives in New York City.
Okay.
She was actually just recently also featured in Forbes and in O magazine. So that's one. There's another girl who I found out about when I was doing her last name. Let me see. I'm gonna do something.
I really love the duality of being able to search on the Googles.
Because I don't want to get this woman. I think she's very sorry, this is probably bad. I'm sitting here searching.
No, you're fine.
But
hi, Egypt. I love you too. Okay, you ready to go to bed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, come on, get up.
Mom, here's a place on it. Bacon.
Okay, thank you. I'm not having any more kids.
You put on it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Were you able to find her name?
I found her YouTube channel. I didn't find her last name, but if you search her YouTube, it's called Sitting Pretty Lolo.
Okay. I'm writing it down now. Sitting Pretty Lolo.
I want to say her last name is Brown, but that's probably not correct. But anyway, I think she's very interesting. She does a lot of, she's in the fashion and fashion industry and getting people with disabilities out in the media and movies. And Spencer, that's her name. Okay, it's Lauren Lolo Spencer. That's her name.
Thank you. Thank you, Auntie, for turning on the light. Well, an hour and a half into my engagement. I appreciate it.
So those are two. other person, I'll give you another one, is Dr. Donna Walton, who is the founder of an organization called Divas with Disabilities, which is all about, again, what I said Lola is about, getting more representation of Black women with disabilities in films, in TV, and, you know, in the media, and playing our own parts.
Yes.
Not
Okay.
having somebody, you know, that's playing disabled, somebody that is actually has a disability, playing the parts in movies, in TV shows, you know, whatever. So those are the people that I would say that I.
Shameka, thank you so much for that feedback. I really appreciate it. This has been another amazing episode of The Full Set. I appreciate having you as a guest. I appreciate the flexibility you've shown me in rescheduling. I know that earlier, like in the series, we were supposed to do a midday and then like my job and then your job. So I really appreciate your flexibility. I hope that everyone was touched and everyone comes and revisits this episode. There was so much here, so much tenderness and so much amazingness all at the same time. I appreciate you. I'm so glad you said yes to come on the show. And
Absolutely. I would do anything. And I, you know, got to see a little appearance of my favorite person. You know, I love your.
Fuck me. It's all about Egypt. Every time I turn around.
You know, I love her too. Even though she has no idea who I am. You know, they have no idea who I am, but I love
Egypt, do you want to say hi to Shameka? Come say hi. Say hi, Shameka.
Hi,
Hi.
Is that real?
Yes, it's a video.
Hi.
Wild to see themselves on television.
I'm a little red.
You're a little red.
No, I'm a little red.
Okay, all right. All right, well, y'all have a good night. This has been another amazing episode of The Full Set. Say talk to you later. They don't care. They're watching Go Gabba Gabba. All right, bye, y'all.
Bye.